A locked door only tells you who can't get in. It doesn't tell you who already has a key. I learned that at 3:12 in the morning, in a motel room, I'd triple-checked before going to bed. I've worked on the road for almost 10 years. I'm in and out of motels constantly, so I've seen enough weird things to know that most of them have ordinary explanations. Thin walls, bad plumbing, drunk guests, people getting the wrong room. I'd never had a reason to think otherwise. Until that night. I was driving between job sites through a rural part of the Ridge District when the rain got bad enough that I decided to stop for the night. The motel was an old 2-story place beside the highway. Worn carpet, fake plants beside the front desk, a weather channel playing silently on a television mounted in the corner. The woman at the desk handed me a key card. Room 18. I asked, "Anyone staying next to me?" She checked the computer. Room 17's empty. Good. My room was at the end of the first floor hallway. I checked the bathroom, looked under the bed, put my bag on the chair, then locked the door and threw the deadbolt. I always do that. Around midnight, footsteps came down the hallway. They stopped outside my door, then continued toward the lobby. A minute later, it happened again. Footsteps. Pause. Continue. I looked through the peephole. Nobody. Then, around 1:30, someone tried my door handle. Slowly. Down. Stopped. Back up. I got out of bed and checked the deadbolt. Still locked. I looked through the peephole again. Nothing. Wrong room, I told myself. That explanation held for about 30 seconds. Then the handle moved again. Twice. Fast this time. Down. Up. Down. Up. Then the footsteps walked away. I stayed awake for a while after that. Eventually, I went back to bed. I don't remember hearing anything before I woke up. I just woke up. The room was dark. The television was off. And my door was open about 6 inches. I couldn't move. The deadbolt was still thrown. The chain was still attached. But the door was open. Then I heard breathing. Someone was standing just outside the bathroom. A man. Dark jacket. Dark pants. Not moving. Neither was I. For maybe 5 seconds, we just stared at each other. Then he stepped into the light from the window. He was holding a key card. He looked down at it, then at me. "Sorry," he said quietly. "Wrong room." He turned and walked out. I heard the hallway door slam. I didn't move. I didn't chase him. I didn't even call out. I just sat there staring at my door. Deadbolt still thrown. Chain still hooked. There was no way it should have opened at all. I tested it myself once I could move. The chain stopped it at exactly 6 inches, right where I'd seen it. Maybe I'd dreamed the man. Maybe I'd been half asleep. I tried to make either explanation work. Then I looked down. One wet shoe print beside my bed. Just one. I hadn't made it, and the man's shoes hadn't looked wet. The print was facing the bed, not the door. Whoever made it had been standing right beside me. I called the front desk. Nobody answered. I called again. Still nothing. So I called the police. They arrived about 15 minutes later. The clerk, back on shift by then, pulled up the electronic lock records at an officer's request. She stared at the screen, then at me. There was a lock entry for my door at exactly 3:11 a.m. 1 minute before I woke up. The officer asked who had access to the master keys. She said management and maintenance. The manager wasn't there. The maintenance worker wasn't on the property. The officer asked her to pull up the hallway camera. Nothing. No one walking toward my room. No one walking away. No one in the hallway at all. Then he rewound the footage. At 3:11, the screen went black. 7 seconds later, it came back. I've never seen it do that, the clerk said. There was no backup. The parking lot camera had the same 7-second gap. Same minute. I checked out before sunrise. I didn't ask for a refund. I just wanted to leave. A week later, the manager called. He said they'd gone through the key system and couldn't explain the entry. They'd replaced the old master keys anyway. Then he asked me something strange. Did the man say anything else before he left? Just wrong room. Silence. Then, are you sure he didn't say room 18? I told him I was sure. He went quiet again. Quiet enough that I asked what was going on. That's when he told me they'd found a card during the audit. It had been sitting in the maintenance office. No name, just a number. 18, he said. I asked if it had opened my door. No. His answer came too quickly. It's dead, never programmed for any room. It shouldn't open anything. I said that didn't make sense. The officer had shown me a lock entry from 311. I thought it was a master key entry. The manager went quiet. Then he said, "That's the problem." I waited. When a valid key opens a door, the system records the key number. He paused. There isn't one. I didn't understand. What do you mean? There was an entry at 311, room 18, but there's no key number attached to it. So what does it say? He took a breath. It just says the door was opened. I didn't say anything. Neither did he. No key number. No card. No explanation. Just the door. I haven't stayed in that motel again. I've stayed in plenty of others since. I still check the deadbolt. I still check the chain. Before I turn the lights off, I still look through the peephole. But I don't check who's in the hallway anymore. I check who's not there. End quote. Because the thing that bothers me isn't that someone got into my room. It's that the motel never found the key. They found a card with the number 18 on it. But the system said no card had opened my door. Something had opened it. At 3:11 in the morning. While I was inside, I still don't know who opened that door. I just know one thing. Whatever opened it already had a key. They said my name through a wall that belonged to a room the clerk swore was empty. That's the part I still can't explain. I've spent enough nights in cheap motels to know the walls don't block much televisions, arguments, doors closing. You learn to tune it out. So when I first heard noise from room 10, I didn't think twice. I was passing through the Ridge district during a storm and stopped at a small roadside motel. 2 floors, exterior doors, maybe 20 rooms, the kind of place where the vacancy sign buzzes louder than it lights up. Room 9, the clerk said, handing me a key. Then, before I asked, room 10's empty. We're doing work in there. I remember that he said it without me asking. I locked up, turned on the TV. Around 10:30, another one started through the wall. Low, some news program. A chair scraped. Someone coughed. I called the desk. Is someone in room 10? A pause. No, it's closed. I can hear someone. I'll check. A few minutes later, nobody's there. Room's locked. Old buildings carry sound strangely, I told myself, and went to sleep. At 2:20, I woke up to a room that felt colder than when I'd fallen asleep. The kind of stillness where you can hear your own heartbeat before you hear anything else. The television next door was still going. A man's voice, too quiet to make out. Then, knock, 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 3 from inside room 10. I sat up slowly, the sheets sticking to my skin, and walked to the wall. Hello? Nothing. Then, barely a whisper. Please, are you okay? Don't open it. Open what? Silence. Then, something heavy scraped across the floor on the other side. Slow, deliberate, close enough that I felt it through the wall. I called the desk again. No answer. Tried again. Nothing. At 2:31, the television cut out. The quiet after was worse. Footsteps crossed the room and stopped against the shared wall. 3 knocks. I didn't answer. 3 more. Then, close enough that it felt like it came from inside the drywall. He's awake. I backed away. I didn't know who he meant. Then it said my name. Full first name. I hadn't given it to the clerk I'd paid cash. Nothing written on the key packet. Hadn't said it to a soul in that building. For a second, I couldn't feel my own hands. I stood frozen against that wall, running through explanations that all fell apart the moment I tried to finish them. Then the scraping came again, this time from directly beneath my bathroom floor, close, slow, patient. 3 slow knocks rose up through the tile, and I remember staring at my own bare feet on the linoleum, certain I could feel the vibration through them. I didn't sleep again. I sat on the edge of the bed with every light on, watching the thin gray line under the curtains until it turned into actual daylight, then went straight to the desk. The same clerk was there. I told him everything. His expression barely shifted, but enough that I noticed. "Come with me." He took a master key from behind the counter. 5. Room 10 was gutted. No bed, no TV, no chair, carpet stripped to bare subfloor, no working light. It smelled like wet plaster and something underneath that, mineral and stale, like standing water that had been sitting for weeks. Nothing in that room could have made a single sound I'd heard. Then what did I hear? He didn't answer. Near the far wall was a section of drywall, newer than the rest, with a small metal panel near the floor. Fresh, muddy drag marks led right up to its edge. "Maintenance access," he said before I asked. "Plumbing and electrical." "When was someone last in here?" "Yesterday. Maintenance." He didn't know the time. "You're not the first guest to hear something," he added when I pushed. He wouldn't say how many. He said they'd assumed the noise carried in from the utility space during the renovation. I didn't believe him, but I checked out anyway and started driving. About 20 minutes in, my phone rang. The manager. He'd pulled the maintenance records and the camera covering the exterior stairs. At 2:17 that morning, it showed someone walking up, stopping outside, room 10, then disappearing from frame for 3 minutes before walking back down. Not entering, not leaving. Just gone, then back. "There's a maintenance door around the corner the camera doesn't cover," he said. "It should have been locked." "Did he have a key?" "We couldn't tell." A pause. "Did you take any pictures last night? Anything with the hallway in it?" That's when I remembered. I'd taken one myself, at check-in, sent to a coworker while I was complaining about the place. Nothing more than a lazy shot of the hallway before I'd even unpacked. I told him to hold on and pulled up my gallery while he stayed on the line. Room 9 was in it, so was the door beside it. Room 10 open about an inch. 4 fingers gripped the inside edge. Timestamp 10:14 p.m., almost 4 hours before the first knock. I sent it to him without saying anything. It took him almost a minute to respond. When he did, his voice was flatter than before, like he was choosing each word before he let himself say it. That door shouldn't have been open. The room was supposed to be locked. Was it? He didn't answer that one either. I never heard from him again. Maybe it was a trespasser who knew the building's utility spaces better than the staff did. Maybe the motel had a security problem nobody wanted to put on paper. I don't know. But I still have that photograph. And once in a while I zoom in on the hand, not to figure out who it belonged to, but to figure out how long they'd already been standing there before I ever raised the camera. I still ask if the room next to mine is occupied when I check into a motel. Now I ask a second question too. Who has access to it when the answer is no? Someone warned me that night. Calm voice, right on time, like she already knew what was coming. The motel says she never existed. I've driven alone for work for years. Long highways, unfamiliar towns, whatever motel sits closest to the job site. I don't spook easily. A car behind me for a few miles means nothing. A dark sedan finding me 3 times in one night, in places it had no way of finding me, was a different problem. 9 p.m. A gas station. A sedan at the edge of the lot, one headlight dimmer than the other. Gone by the time I came back out. 20 minutes later, behind me on the highway. Same dim headlight, same road, I told myself. Not many options out here. It exited. I kept driving. An hour later, a second gas station. Same car, parked at the air pump. I hadn't seen it pass me. By the third sighting, parked across from a diner, headlights off. No driver in it, I'd stopped looking for explanations. I circled the block twice. It didn't move. I got back on the highway and watched my mirrors the rest of the way. Nothing. I started to breathe again. 20 minutes later, I reached the Motel Old. 2 floors, exterior doors, the kind of place where every room faces the parking lot instead of an inside hallway. A single flickering light hung over the office door. Checked in, room 12. The clerk was young, barely looked up from her phone. Name tag said D. No sedan in the lot. I climbed the outdoor stairs, my footsteps loud on the metal grating, and let myself into the room. It smelled like old carpet, an air freshener that had given up. I locked the deadbolt, closed the curtains, and told myself it was over. An hour later, a car door, then another. I looked through the curtain. The sedan, directly below my window. A man got out. Gray jacket. He stood in the pale wash of the parking lot light and looked straight up at the glass, unmoving, like he already knew exactly which window was mine. I stepped back into the dark of the room, my pulse loud enough that I could hear it in my ears. The room phone rang, and the sound of it in that quiet room felt enormous. A woman's voice older than the girl who'd checked me in, and far too calm for a stranger calling at 10 p.m. A man had come into the office, asking if the guest in room 12 had checked in alone. Gray jacket, she said, before I even asked. I told her not to give him anything. She already hadn't. Then, gently, like she knew what I'd say, before I said it, she asked if I wanted her to call the police. I said yes. I turned off every light I could reach without moving far from the bed and sat on the edge of the mattress in the dark, listening to the air conditioner cycle on and off, the only sound in the room besides my own breathing. A few minutes later, footsteps on the stairs, slow, one at a time, the metal grating groaning faintly under the weight. They stopped outside my door. A shadow settled under it and didn't move. 10 seconds, 20, 30. Then, a sound, not a knock, a fingernail, dragged once across the wood, slow enough that I could hear the grain catch. Then again, closer to the handle. This time, I held my breath until it stopped. The footsteps left, unhurried, the way someone walks when they aren't worried about being followed. I never looked through the peephole. I couldn't make myself. The police found an empty lot. No sedan, no man, nothing on the surrounding streets. An officer suggested I move on. I checked out before midnight, never seeing the young clerk again. Her shift must have ended. The next morning, I called to thank the woman who'd phoned the police for me. The manager went quiet. There's only one clerk logged in that night, he said, 9 to 7. She checked you in, and she says she never called your room. Says she didn't know anything happened until she saw this morning's police log. There were 2 women, I said. One at check-in, one who called. He checked again. No second name on the schedule. No second number logged calling out of that office phone after 9. Then who called me? I asked. He didn't have an answer. I never saw the sedan again. But I still think about that voice, how calm it was, how it seemed to already know what was happening before I'd said a word. I used to think the frightening part of being warned was not knowing who was warning you. Now, I think it's this. You may never find out, because, as far as that motel is concerned, she was never there at all. If you want more stories like these, subscribe to the channel, and if you enjoyed the video, leave a like. It really helps the channel grow.